Hello, hello, hello.
Hello,
I never know when
everybody.
it actually goes live, so I have to say hello like
You
four
just like
times.
you just keep talking until you're sure we're live. You're like, no, it must be happening. I can stop saying hello.
It goes through this whole process, but it seems to start before I think it does. So, anyways, hi everybody.
I think we figured it out. Yeah, welcome to our power lunch this week. We have I think, a pretty cool topic. One that's changed, I guess, not our like whole investing method, but kind of our view on investing.
Yeah, our perspective, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
our view.
it's definitely added a lot of value to how we think about real estate investing, and especially how we think of it as a business, which I think is really important if you're planning on scaling your real estate business, because it is a business when it comes down to it, and there are a lot more factors than just buying a building and hoping for the best. So we'll get into that a little bit later. We have some big news.
Hell yeah.
What's the big news?
We are firm on our 24 unit land development also deal in
it's 24
Pembroke.
units that exist and a land development deal, just to clarify.
All in one.
All in one beautiful package.
We have been working on this one for a long time. This has been since January. We had it under contract. We've been back. It has been a roller coaster. We've been back and forth. The deal almost fell apart probably 2 or 3 times, maybe more.
It's just
we've been
coming with us.
We've been going back to the table to renegotiate. We've been getting extensions on extensions on extensions. Mm-hmm. That's never fun, but sometimes it's necessary.
Some stress. A little bit of stress, but I think we've learned a ton through the process, and we've obviously worked really hard to get it to where it is now. We are firm. We are moving forward. We have things in order. So yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, it was a long time coming. We talk about the fact that we've been working on this since January, but it also comes down to, we've had other deals that, we thought were good and end up falling through for various reasons. So, it's not just working on this deal since January. It's also from the 2 deals prior that are very similar that didn't end up working out.
Yeah. So this
it's a long time coming.
This one that's a good way to put it, actually. We've actually been working on this one for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Without it being this specific deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously this it was an exciting day for us. We actually closed pretty soon as well. So it's like firm close kind of on this one. But yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Closing date. Do we share the closing date?
No, that'll be a surprise. You'll see the post eventually.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming up quickly.
Firm closed.
Firm closed, yeah. Yeah, we're really excited. We've been doing a lot of education over the last 5 years, but especially over the last 1.5 years, like a ton of education. We've learned a lot just by doing. We were also obviously
experience and action are really major parts of our learning process. Yeah,
like getting out there and doing it. And I think a lot of that came from being a part of Wealth Genius, which is the coaching program that we did over the last 1.5 years. It taught us so much. And, I think the biggest thing was that it taught us to take action, which is what got us to where we are today, which is what got us to the yes deals that didn't work out, but we were able to learn from them. And I mean, we're adding 20, like brand new, not just 24 units, like brand new 24 units to our portfolio with a land development deal where we can build an extra
12.
Yeah, 12 to 14 units. Plus there's like potential for some other development and a lot. It's not a part of this deal, but another lot very close by that we're looking into right now. So there's a ton that's going to come out of
taking over Pembroke.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I like Pembroke.
Yeah.
And I think Pembroke's going to like us.
Yeah.
So yeah, big day, huge things.
Yeah. So that's a little update about us and big news that we had. Welcome to everybody that is here. Whether you are tuning in live on Facebook or on YouTube, because we always post this to YouTube afterwards for people to watch. If you are new here, say hello.
Hi, Sam.
I see Sam is already here. Hello, hello. Yeah. Share it with your friends. Drop a like.
Yeah. Like Jeff said, let us know we're here. And again, we like this to be, like always, we like this to be conversational. So,
yeah.
I mean, if people don't comment, we're just going to talk. So if you have something that you want to say,
if you want to be heard, we're listening.
Yeah.
We are reading the chat, and yeah, let us know if you have thoughts on the topic of today, which is
really about finding your niche. Kind of narrowing in on almost like it's a business model. It's basically like creating your business model.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people forget that real estate investing, if you're doing this full time and you're looking to like expand your portfolio, grow, I think it's different if you're just buying one property or two properties just to like help retirement or whatever.
Yeah, at that point you don't really need a niche because you haven't really, if you're buying one property, you're not developing a niche.
Yeah.
It's not a tradition until you've done it a few times.
Yes. But if you're looking to get into real estate as a business, it's a business and you need a business model when it comes down to it. And I think a lot of people forget about that. So we want to talk about that today. It was actually inspired by a book that both of us recently read. We were prepared.
So it's funny. So this was recommended to us as a read. It's a very quick read. Like the text is big and the topic is, it's on point. So
yeah, and you see, it's not so if you're not a big reader,
yeah,
it's okay. Look, it's not bad.
Yeah, it's really helpful, and it's funny because it was recommended to us. I read through it, and then I started talking to Dakota about it, and I think it was really important for us to get on the same page, having you read the book as well.
Yeah.
Or you having read whatever.
So shout out to Mark Friends for gifting this book to us,
and shout out to Chris Davies for
writing it.
Writing the book.
Most importantly, thanks for writing it.
But yeah, this changed our whole perspective on how to build our portfolio. And it was good timing as well because we were really just starting to build our multifamily portfolio when we read this. So it really helped us, I don't know, hit the ground running with a plan in mind and the idea behind building our portfolio like a business.
Yeah.
And running it like a business.
Yeah. So I don't want to take credit for what we're talking about today. This is based off of what we learned from this book written by Chris Davies. So thank you, Chris, for writing such a great book and something that was so helpful. And I highly recommend we're not getting paid. Chris Davies didn't message us beforehand.
This is not a paid advertisement, but just an awesome book. And actually, I know I flashed it on the screen, but it's called Apartment Buildings That Outperform.
Yeah.
Written by Chris Davies.
And it's Canadian. So if you're like us, we're Canadian investors. It's Canadian, so it's kind of nice to have somebody who's writing from a Canadian perspective.
Yeah, but if you are in the U.S., there's nothing specific that's Canadian about this.
No.
So
it's just nice having a little maple leaf on it. Right?
Is there a maple leaf on it?
There's a little maple leaf on it.
Cute.
We don't get too many books, I think, written by Canadians, so it's nice. But
yeah, the other thing that really inspired this conversation, I think, is a lot of talk that I think a lot of people have
Thanks, Sam, for putting that in the chat.
Beautiful.
If you're watching this afterwards, unfortunately, you don't have the link, but if you are, Sam just posted it. So,
well, we can post it in the YouTube description.
It'll be below. If you're watching on YouTube, it's gonna be below.
Nice.
I'm up with the lingo.
You're a YouTuber now.
Woo!
Something else that has inspired this conversation today is the talk about becoming the, right? Really, in order to become the, you need to be the something, and developing a niche is really going to help you become the blank investor.
Yeah, and I think taking a step back from, because if you're like, what the heck is becoming the, so I know there's a lot of people, other Wealth Genius members on our profile. I know you're probably watching this, so you get it, because we talk about becoming the all the time. But it's really about becoming, like, going from a investor,
anything, a blank.
Yeah, a realtor, a mortgage broker, because A is like, you're just one of them.
A doctor, a lawyer.
Yeah. But if you become the in your category, now suddenly you've stepped above that A category. You are the person to go to for that thing. So You'll see like our good friend Mandy Brenham. She is the JV queen. You know who you're going to go to if you have questions about JVs, because she has claimed that title of the JV queen.
Yeah.
So
she's going to attract people versus a JV investor is going to have to beg for the business. And that's kind of how Alfonso usually puts it, right? Is anything has to beg for the business.
Yeah. So that is kind of, I guess, the overarching kind of theme of creating your business model, creating your niche, is what is that what does that look like? What is your the investor in Pembroke, the multifamily, you know what I mean? Like you're trying to figure out what your the is. And I think that's where this book really helped us to start. Not necessarily like we haven't completely narrowed down what our the is yet, but at least it's gotten us thinking about what does that look like for us? What is our the and what is our business model? So what we learned is there are a couple of different ways to create your business model. And I guess it depends on which direction you want to go with it. I think the easiest one to kind of wrap your head around is like the geographical piece of it. Because that one to me like made the absolute most, all of them make sense.
Yeah.
But this one to me is like very obvious. But again, people don't really think about it.
Yeah. So if we were to, we're buying this 24 unit in Pembroke. If we buy another one in Pembroke, now we have like a geographical niche. It's a lot easier to acquire another building in Pembroke, having done one already. You already know your resources that are local to the area. You have maybe a property management company that is local to the area that now can manage the other one as well. And yeah, just a lot of benefits for operations, for acquisitions.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Like it's a bit like starting up any business, it's a lot of work, right? Like you have to get certain contacts, you have to figure out who the person is for your business, right? Again, going back to you have to find out who the contractor is if we're talking real estate, who the contractor is, who the property manager is, they're going to be on your team. Yeah. And if you're constantly shifting spots, that's going to be really difficult, right? Yeah. Like if you're finding the for one building and then moving to a new spot, you're not utilizing all that work that you put into to create that team. You're basically saying, all right, you take care of that building. We're going to go over here now and buy a building in Alberta somewhere, or like New Brunswick or the States or whatever.
Or even just another like place that's an hour or two away, right? Yeah. Like now you're no longer following that geographical niche. You have something and you need to rebuild a system. You need to rebuild your team.
Your knowledge,
yeah, because
right? There's a lot of
we've done a lot of research into Pembroke and the surrounding area. And to have to do that again for a new location, now you're no longer streamlined, right? So you want to be able to streamline and essentially rinse and repeat.
Yeah. There's cost benefits, right? Because if you're able to create relationships, well, that piece, the time is money piece, but there's also like, you create a good relationship with a property manager. If you're going to be giving them more than one building to work with, there's a good potential that, you can work out a deal that says, why don't you reduce your cost a little bit for us, but we'll give you all of this business. I see it a lot with like snow removal contracts and lawn maintenance contracts, where they'll say like, okay, so we have a building here and a street over, we have a building here. You can, make a whole bunch of money in this one area. You're not driving all over into different towns, all over the city. So because we're giving you all this business in this one geographical location, why don't we work out a deal? So I've seen that. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones, and like garbage removal and that kind of stuff, where people can work out deals on their contracts because now they're focused in one spot and they can use the same team and save some money that way. Yeah. And supers, we talked about a little bit about superintendents.
Yeah, having somebody like an on-site person. That person may be on-site one property, but they can drive down the street and help take care of the other property that you have that's really, really close by.
Like if you have, because there's a certain number of units that it starts to make sense to have a super. Like it doesn't make sense to have a super if you have like a triplex, right? Because the cost of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I know typically like around 16 units is where it starts to make sense to have a super on site. But if you have, a 10 unit here, yeah, okay, you have just that 10 unit. Having a super might not make sense. Mm-hmm. But if you have a 10 unit, a 5 unit, like another 10 unit, now they can start to take care of that whole, like that little area, the geographical area. And now it makes sense to have a super, which again will decrease your property management costs. So yeah, things start to make a little bit more sense if you niche in. So tons of benefits, definitely from the knowledge perspective, from the building your team perspective, from the energy output perspective, because you're not trying to recreate the wheel in all these different areas, and then just simply from a cost, like wholesaling, right? Like you're no longer dealing with one little thing. It's like going to Costco versus going to like Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can buy bulk.
You're buying in bulk in one area for sure.
So there's the cost benefit that comes from buying in bulk.
Yeah.
So that part's nice.
There's another side of geographical where it's not necessarily you're buying down the street or in the same neighborhood or in the same geographical location. You're buying in a similar geographical location. Mm-hmm. So you made a good point earlier, and I know there's people listening outside of the Ottawa market, but you were talking about Smiths Falls, which is a secondary market, tertiary market maybe, and Cornwall. They have very, very similar attributes as a town. They're not geographically together. They're far enough apart that you're probably going to have different managers and different teams for both areas, but they're very, very similar in locations. So now you're streamlining certain parts of the business where maybe if your tenant profile is the same, then you're streamlining your marketing to specific tenants and filling it with the same type of demographic, I guess.
Yeah, you're not, like you said, you're not necessarily, like we talked a lot about building the team. Like you'll have to rebuild your team, but at least like you have a really good idea of what that team is going to look like. Mm-hmm. And I know you were talking a little bit about like kind of what we wanted to talk about today. And you were mentioning the idea of like your marketing materials, right? So you're going to have similar marketing materials and similar types of buildings in both. Like, especially if you're getting into the larger multis, like people will want certain amenities in their building. Hi, Hazel. Our dog's hanging out behind us. Your certain tenant profile is going to want certain amenities in their building. And if you are working in areas that have similar tenant profiles, you've already done the research on what those amenities are. So you're not having, again, to recreate the wheel to try to figure out what your tenants want, how to work with your tenants, what they need. You can now copy and paste that into, yes, different geographical locations, but it's similar now between the two spots.
Yeah, I'd say those two locations that I mentioned, they're both about 45 minutes from Ottawa. So there's a piece of material that you have right there where they're both within commuting distance to a major city center. Right. Yeah. So that is helping kind of determine what your niche is.
Yeah.
From a geographical perspective.
Yeah.
So transportation is a big part of it. I know that's talked about I lost it, the book that we were talking about.
And I know, like, I don't love the idea of mining towns. That's not really in my area of where I want to invest. But again, same idea. If you are investing in somewhere that's like a mining town, the mining towns are all going to be very similar. So if it's not a niche I would recommend, but it's just an example of like where the populations are going to be very similar in a way that's not very specific to the Ottawa area.
Yeah, I think essentially if you can copy and paste a piece of your business model, then that is defining a niche, right? So you can basically, a mining town, you can take a building that's in one mining town and literally replicate in another mining town, and you're going to have the same results essentially.
Actually, another one that's interesting with Pembroke is like retirement communities. So if you have some areas that people tend to move to retire, you'll want to get to know like kind of the age range, the demographic of an area. But if you can create a building that's great for, some people that are more in the retirement age, now you can take that type of building and move that into areas that have that type of demographic.
Yeah. Well, and talking about demographic, we'll move on to the second kind of niche that they talk about in that book, and that is demographics, right? So this is essentially your tenant profile. Mm-hmm. So talk about marketing and talk about who you're filling your units with. Again, copy and paste, right? If you have the same type of tenant profile across your portfolio, then that makes your management of those buildings very, very streamlined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, your marketing materials can be very similar. I can think in this situation, you are going to be geographically looking in different spaces. Like you can have retirement buildings in somewhere like Ottawa, right? Like you can still have a retirement building in Ottawa. There are retired people here, and you could also have a similar model in Pembroke, right? Yeah. If your focused demographic is I want students is a big one. A lot of people like to focus on students. So you don't necessarily have to be in towns that are really similar. You just need to be by a university or a college. Mm-hmm. So if your niche is you do student rentals, now you can go into different geographical locations. I think though it's still like the more I think you can niche down where you are creating systems, while still obviously like you don't want to go so niche that like there's one building you can buy and that's it. That's the end of your journey. But
they do talk about that though, about hyper focus or finding your like a hyper niche and going as detailed as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I think
but again, without factoring out
or
without being stuck in one building.
Yeah, you still have to be broad enough that you can buy multiple buildings because obviously you want to grow. But I think if you're able to like you're niching down maybe into college or university areas that are closer, like you might not want to be an investor that's doing student rentals in Ottawa and then one in Alberta, and then you have one, I don't know, in Halifax. I think that could get a little bit tricky unless you've built your team, like you've built your team in your first spot, right? You have your student rentals in Ottawa. Mm-hmm. You've built that team. You're happy with how that's going. That's basically taking care of itself. And now you can take that model and move it over to a new geographical location.
Yeah, again, being able to copy specific aspects of your of whatever your business model is and move it and paste it essentially to another location.
Yeah.
Right? So you're still going to be marketing the same way. Your renovations are going to be very, very similar. Maybe even the layout. If you're building, the layout can be identical.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you have something that's working, do it again.
Yeah, well actually like based on the whole renovations piece, when we were flipping, we did the same renovations every single time because we knew the demographic that we were going for. We knew
the paint color, we knew the cabinets we were using, we knew like all of the cosmetic pieces. I didn't want to go to Home Depot every single time we were doing a flip and pick out fixtures. No, this is what I want. If they don't have the exact same one, a similar one, right? The contractor knew exactly what we were looking for.
And again, this comes back to like the HGTV thing. Like we aren't HGTV flippers. We aren't trying to create like these really special places for like one certain person that like, this person needs like a reading nook and it needs to be green. And like, we had everything was very basic. Everything was the exact same. We knew the demographic we were going for. These were like mid to high end flips, not like your super high end where people, want surprises,
they
want like
they
special
don't like the
features.
Color of the cabinets or the color of the marble or that specific type of stone on the countertops.
Yeah. So again, that's another type of niching, right? Like exactly who your person is, who you're targeting. And we literally had a sheet that had listed out, these are your color options, like 3 different whites, basically, whichever one made the most economical sense at the time. A color for a handle, a shape for a handle, whichever one was, again, most economical at that time. Everything was listed out so that someone could just go take that and copy and paste it to these different buildings or different houses. And it's the same, that's the same idea. That's also a type of niching and a type of understanding what your demographic is.
Yeah.
And I think it creates a very, again, you're becoming V in that case. Like once you start to niche, you're becoming V. And it makes it a lot easier if you're someone who brings on partners, especially passive partners. It makes it a lot easier for you to bring partners on because people know exactly what to expect from you. If they like your model and they like what you're doing, they're likely to stick with you because, you know, they align with whatever your model is. Yeah. They like what you're doing. It's predictable. And people like that. Like with investing, especially passive investing, people like predictability, right?
Yeah. Consistency it's gonna help with consistency as well. Yeah. There's no surprises, right? When you've really niched down, there's no major surprises that come out because everything, again, you're copy and paste, right? Yeah. Nothing unexpected.
Yeah, so it's a little bit easier for everybody. It's easier for you from an investment perspective. It's easier for you to build your teams, save some money that way, but it's also easier for you to attract partners to you because they know what you're doing, and it's going to change maybe a little bit depending on maybe different locations or something like that, but you're going to be very consistent in what you're doing, and people like that.
Yeah. And from a passive perspective, passive partner perspective, if you how do I want to put this? Passive investors don't really need to have as much focus on a niche because they're investing passively. They're not the one that's dealing with the operations. They're not the one that's dealing with the management, all the acquisition side of it. They're just investing their money into it. So if you're a passive investor, this is something that you don't necessarily need to worry about so much. You can diversify a little bit more. If you want to invest in self-storage, go for it. Maybe understand the basics of it so that you know if you're getting into a good deal or not. But you don't need to understand it from an in-depth level. If we wanted to get into self-storage from an active side, then we better really start to shift our focus into what does self-storage actually look like? How do we make sure that it's a good deal, that we're creating a deal, structuring a good deal?
Where should a self-storage unit be?
Where do we need to do it, right? So this is a whole other niche. And I think I see this a lot in the investing community is people get shiny object syndrome. And that's really a symptom of not having a niche, not really understanding where you want to go and what you want to build your portfolio out to look like. Because now all of a sudden, all of these things start to look really attractive to you because you haven't narrowed it down what you actually want to do.
Yeah, I talk to a lot of my students about this when they're, you know, they're trying to decide, do we actively diversify into different areas? We have some passive, like we have funds that we can do some stuff passively with. Like what do we do? Because we want to be here, we want to be here, we want to be there, we want to do this and this and this. We want to do all these things. And one of the things that I recommend to them is become an expert in one space actively. So become an expert. You're going to be the trusted person to do this. And again, this is niching. This is back to niching down in whatever area you want to niche down in. Figure that out. Become an expert. Do that actively. And well, they're like, okay, well, should I do that with my own funds? And I talked to them about become the expert. And now you are giving somebody else the opportunity to invest with you as the expert in that niche. Then what I would recommend typically doing, and again, this is a recommendation, it's not necessarily right for everybody.
Or the be all end all.
Yeah. But something to think about, right? You are now the expert in this area. You are the active investor in this niche. Let other people, give them the opportunity to invest with you as the expert in that niche, and then diversify passively with your funds. So now you can invest with somebody who's an expert in a different niche, if that's what you're interested in doing. You don't have to become the expert in that niche. You should know a little bit about it, like Jeff said, enough to know that it's a good, solid deal.
Yeah, you're not off the hook. If you're a passive investor, you're not off the hook. You still need to understand the basics.
Yeah, like still know the deal, know the basics of the deal, know the fundamentals, understand that it's a good deal. But you don't have to be the expert. So use your funds to diversify into different areas of investing. different niches within real estate. Like you don't have to go into like all these different areas, but you can diversify within real estate, but don't necessarily put your funds where you are the expert, because that's not going to help you diversify your portfolio. So just something to think about.
Food for thought.
Yeah, like I said, it's not right for everybody. It's something that we talk about, like I talk about with some of my students as something to think about. It's not right for everyone, but I'm just good to consider.
Yeah. There's a building that I want to talk about, this building, because I think it's had a big impact on kind of our vision, and I think it works really well on this topic for finding your niche. If you're in the Ottawa area, or if you're not, I mean, you can Google it, but there's a building called Live, Liv, Live building. And I love this building. And I think that from a niche perspective, they've really gone for a specific type of demographic. Mm-hmm. They could literally take this exact building and replicate in any market that has that specific demographic, that specific tenant profile. It's really like, it's close to downtown. It's walking distance. So they're not marketing to people that really have cars. I'm sure they have some parking. I'm sure they charge for that parking as well. But I think your most of your tenant profile, they ride bikes. They're walking distance to places. They're younger. It's a younger crowd. Mm-hmm. Really, it's kind of like a millennial building, I guess.
I was just gonna say it's definitely targeted to millennials.
They have a lot of, but that's a niche, right? So they've really focused on what they want. But they could take that same building and that same marketing plan and put it in Toronto, put it in other markets that have that same profile, that mm-hmm. tenant profile, and have pretty much the same results with it, and fill the building just like that with the same tenants.
Yeah, it's an interesting building because the units themselves, from what I understand, I've never been inside of it, but from what I understand, the units are not very big.
I have, and they're tiny.
So they're like 1 bedroom or bachelor, I think, for the most part.
There's some 2 bedrooms. Yeah, they have a mix. Bachelor, 1 bedroom, and 2 bedrooms. But I'm pretty sure the 1 bedroom, I don't even know now. I think a 1 bedroom is probably over 2,000. Like they're taking like market rent and they're going above it.
But it's because they've understood their demographic. They know exactly what their demographic wants. So, they don't want a ton of parking, like Jeff said. That's not a priority for the demographic that they're going for. They do want activities. So this building...
They do like goat yoga, I think, on the roof.
Yeah, and right? I think I saw they had like a pizza, like a stone pizza making thing. Like it's these like they understand this like live large view of millennials. Like millennials love to travel and do things, and the
Instagram experiences
kind of stuff, right? So they understand what their demographic is looking for, and they understand what their demographic doesn't necessarily need, and they've put their money in a spot that in the spot that the demographic is going to be looking for, and haven't mm-hmm. wasted money on stuff that their demographic doesn't necessarily want. So they've been really smart in the way that they have built the building, because they knew exactly who they were targeting when they built it. It's very clear with the way that it was built. It's a cool looking building even. It's right mm-hmm. off the highway. You can see it all the time when you're driving on the highway that runs through Ottawa. The building itself is Instagrammable.
I mean, there's LED lights on it. It looks really nice, right? There's like a glow that comes off of it. You can see that there's a rooftop patio on it too. Mm-hmm. They've got like the canopy set up and everything.
Yeah. So they've just done a very good job of knowing who they're targeting, knowing their niche, and knowing what they want and what they don't want, and just, giving them everything they want. But that way, yes, okay, like these events are going to be a little bit more expensive.
But so is the income, so is the rent.
They're able to charge because everybody now wants to live there because of this like aura that they've created around this building.
Yeah, there's pride that goes along with it.
Yeah.
There's status that goes along with it.
Yeah. So now people want to live there, mm-hmm. and they can charge above market because it's in demand. I mean, rentals in Ottawa are in demand anyway, but there's that extra shininess to living there.
And their tenant profile is the same. So their marketing is very, very specific to a specific type of demographic, mm-hmm. specific tenant profile. They're not marketing anything about retirement. Unless they're targeting I don't know. Millennials always want to retire at 20, so.
That's true.
Maybe live your retired life now.
Yeah. In your 20s.
Yeah. I love that that type of niche focus and yeah.
It's very smart. They've been very smart about what they've done with the building.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. That's finding your niche.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Yeah. We had a couple of little TED Talk moments in there for sure. So yeah, again, we're still working. This is something that we're still working on. It's not something like maybe you know your niche already and you know which direction you want to go in. I do think that it takes a lot of research and sometimes a little bit of like whoop 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 to figure out what your niche is. Like you have to do some things that you're like, I don't really like this. This doesn't make sense for me. And then you have to, go off track, come back on track, keep going. So it's okay if you're a bit like off kilter, off track every once in a while, but it's just every time you make a purchase, think about these things. Think about what your niche is.
Is this in line with your goal, right?
Yeah.
Your niche should be in line with your goal.
Yeah. And that's a good place to start. Is what are your goals? Like, because some of these opportunities, some of these investment types, some of these niches are going to be higher cash flow, more work. Some of these niches are going to be less cash flow, a little bit less work. And every combination in between. So it's a good place to start to know what your goals are. And then once you understand your goals, start to figure out what niche makes the most sense for your goals. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I
think that's it.
So thanks for tuning in. Again, we'll put the link for that book in the description.